April 2 has arrived, and with it, the immediate introduction of President Trump's reciprocal tariff framework. In contrast to the single-rate industry and country tariffs announced to date, as detailed by the President in his Rose Garden address, reciprocal tariffs apply different rates to each nation based on the barriers to trade US imports face in each particular market. The US's assessment of these barriers to trade includes not only tariffs but also subsidies and other industry support, currency manipulation, and, raised in the press conference, value-added taxes such as Australia's GST, even though these taxes apply not only to imports but also domestic production. The US government has assessed the effective cost of all these measures around the world, country by country, and equated it to a tariff rate. Effective without delay, the US government will levy a tariff on US imports of goods from each nation equivalent to half the estimated barriers in the other country. This will vary greatly, but to give you a sense of the scale, for China, the US's reciprocal rate will be 34%, for India 26%, for Europe 20%, the UK 10%, and for Australia and New Zealand 10%. A 10% floor rate will be put in place for countries with barriers to US imports assessed to be below an effective 20% tariff rate, presumably as an anti-avoidance measure. Because the US assessment takes into consideration industry support and currency policy, many small developing markets will be particularly hard hit. Imports to the US from Cambodia will face a rate of 49%, Laos a tariff rate of 48%, Vietnam 46%, and Sri Lanka 44%. It is also important to note that countries aligned to the US have not received dispensation under this measure, with Taiwanese exports to the US to face a 32% tariff rate, in line with China's 34% rate, and South Korea and Japan not far behind at 25% and 24%. Subsequent comments by Treasury Secretary Bessent, however, have clarified that the 34% rate levied on Chinese imports to the US will be on top of the 20% rate already announced, so a combined 54% rate will be payable on goods imported from China. Canada and Mexico, meanwhile, were left off the table shown at the press conference, so at this stage we assume their 25% rate remains as is. Initial detail from the White House and news reports also suggests that steel, aluminium, and automobiles already subject to 25% tariffs under Section 232 will be exempt from the reciprocal measure. That said, the structure of the reciprocal tariffs means any retaliation by other countries, which is expected, will feed into higher US tariffs on imports from those nations. There is also the potential for a further expansion of the 25% industry tariffs across a wider variety of goods. While these measures will affect Australia and New Zealand directly and through our major trading partners, the greatest impact will be on the US. Already, we have seen US consumer confidence fall sharply, led by expectations of the outlook. Businesses are also showing little to no interest in expanding investment broadly across US industry, with recently announced projects by foreign firms concentrated in niche areas of the economy, such as automotive and chip manufacturing and AI infrastructure. And the US labour market, which is showing great strength coming out of the pandemic, now is at risk of a sustained deterioration. The inflationary consequence of tariffs for the US, meanwhile, means the FOMC will have to keep monetary policy restrictive for the foreseeable future, absent an economic contraction. While the US fiscal position has little to no capacity to fund capacity expansion or incentivize productivity. The administration is instead focused on extending existing income tax cuts, which offer no fresh impetus to demand or capacity. China and other large economies in these regions have capacity to stimulate to offset the initial impact of the US's measures. And in time, China's engagement with Southeast Asia and Europe is likely to grow and offer additional means to counter the cost of US tariffs through efficiency and productivity. A burgeoning Asian middle class will also offer considerable opportunity to deepen demand for Asian-made goods. The point to take from these observations is that while President Trump's administration may raise the stakes further in coming months, the US economy has a limited tolerance to weather these uncertainties, much less so than most of the major economies impacted, such as China and Europe. To the extent that Australia's major trading partners in Asia have capacity to stimulate to offset this pending trade shock, we are well positioned to continue growing robustly through this period of global uncertainty without a material consequence for inflation and monetary policy. As new developments arise, we'll keep you up to date on the most probable implications and the risks.
The content of this recording is informational and of general nature only and is not intended to constitute a research report or reflect any recommendation or financial advice. It has been prepared without taking into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs, and investment decisions should not be based on it. You should obtain your own independent advice before proceeding with any investment decision. Whilst every effort has been taken to ensure that the contents are correct and any opinions, forecasts, conclusions are reasonably held, based on information at the date of recording, Westpac does not make any representation or warranty as to the accuracy or completeness of the statements or information contained in this recording, and any liability therefore is expressly disclaimed to the extent permitted by law. None of the material included in this recording should be copied, published or reproduced in whole or in part without the prior written permission of Westpac.